A bloody weekend for America.
What's the way forward? Is there any hope? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America. Well, I looked at my phone yesterday, saw that there was a live active shooter situation. I put it down, said a quick prayer, started recording for our various channels, and then got done shooting the last video, which was about 11 o'clock at night.
Something like that.
I went to check, and sure enough, 20 of my fellow countrymen, when I say countrymen, apparently this young man went around and was shooting babies.
What do you mean babies?
Babies. He was targeting babies, shooting. So when I say countrymen, it's not completely accurate, but long story short, 20 of them were dead and dozens, of course, injured by yet another active shooter.
He was killing babies?
Yeah, he was...
Like people that had small children? He was killing small children?
He was aiming, he was going after babies, apparently, this guy.
How many babies did he kill?
I'm not sure.
Oh my gosh. It's like people are hitting new levels each time. It's like a child?
Yeah. El Paso mom shopping for school supplies was killed shielding her infant son. Jordan Ancondo died trying to protect her baby.
But the baby lived?
I don't know. She was shielding her 2-month-old. So this guy... So obviously, pretty difficult night. I reached out to certain members of my family who respond in those situations and made sure that they were safe. He was. I went to sleep. I wake up. Of course, I'm expecting more information about El Paso. And then I hear about Dayton. And it took a while for my mind to understand that another one had happened.
Yeah.
While we were all sleeping after crying over our
El Paso.
El Paso.
Yeah.
We wake up to find that there's 9 more people dead in Dayton. This individual showed up, full gear, intact body armor, mask, all that. He was dispatched by the police apparently in 30 seconds. But in 30 seconds, he was able to kill 8 people, including his sister, and wound about 27 other people in 30 seconds. And then somebody who's a very, very, very good friend of the channel said, "Are you going to shoot an episode about this and El Paso, Dayton, and Chicago?" I said, "Chicago?" And sure enough, 7 people are wounded at a park shooting in Chicago. All
Are you serious?
In the last 24 or 48 hours, yeah.
Gosh.
Usually these episodes are researched. There are numbers, there are stats. You guys know what we do. A lot of this episode is just about catharsis and our own. I think one of the things that really bothers me is I'm at a loss as to solutions. Mm-hmm. And so if I look at, we just did a debate about the sex industry.
Yep.
I know the ways that we can solve that problem. Mm-hmm. If I look at immigration, I believe that there are solutions on both sides that can solve the problem. But when it comes to guns in America and the capacity, and again, the Dayton, Ohio shooter killed 9 people in under 30 seconds and wounded 27 other people, if I'm looking at this correctly.
That's wild.
And apparently he bought the gun online in Texas, and then the gun was then shipped to his a gun dealer in Ohio, and then he was able to get the gun. So basically that was a situation where he was able to legally procure this weapon. The other one had basically some form of a modified AK-47, which is the AK-47 is basically the most popular weapon in the world as far as fighting goes. It's used everywhere from Afghanistan to even Spetsnaz to some degree. Special forces, even Russian special forces, still use the AK-47. So it's a gun made for warfare. And arguably, I mean, I've known guys who swear by the AK-47, even though they had access to other kinds of weapons. So I don't know the solution. Now, if you're asking me, hey Vin, you know, if I could have a genie and the genie said everybody's Second Amendment rights would be taken away, that would make it so that not one more innocent person would die in a mass shooting, I would snap my fingers and say, let's do it.
I would too. Yeah.
Second Amendment be damned. Let's do it. Now, I understand all the arguments. Second Amendment is about making sure to protect you from government tyranny, blah, blah, blah. And I understand all the arguments back and forth. Well, what I'm saying is, if I believed that repealing the Second Amendment would stop these mass shootings, I would vote for it immediately. And I would encourage others to. My problem is that I don't see how any kind of restriction can stop these things from happening. To me, if you're the type of person that has the will to have body armor and a mask, and you're willing to kill your own sister, the Dayton shooter killed his own flesh and blood.
Why? Was she in the way, or
did
he target her?
I don't know. She was missing. They were looking for him. Turns out she's dead. If a person is willing to wear gear and all the rest of it, how in the world is a law going to stop him? Lots of pro-gun advocates have pointed out, shooting someone, an innocent person, is illegal. So if they are willing to violate the larger law, why would they follow the lesser law? And although I can't stand the argument, to me it's a very pertinent argument. I don't know how to solve this problem. I'm always, when the NRA and the gun apologists always come on after things like this and say, whatever they say about guns, and I'm not a fan of them at all. I'm a pacifist. I'm completely pacifistic, and that's going to come up in a second here. I just don't know how extra laws are going to stop these issues, and we've got to think long and hard about our relationship to guns in this country. And I think that, I said one time there's 100 million guns in America. It turns out there's about 300 million guns. We're in a country of about 340 to 50 million people. So there's basically a gun for every person. And, gun confiscation in America, I've talked to a couple of my friends in other countries. They talked about, certain gun confiscation movements that have happened in other countries. I just don't think that would work in America because of the ethos of America.
I agree.
And Americans have a very, very unique relationship to guns. And there's almost a religious undertone to it. I don't want to come off as blaming gun rights people either. I don't want to, if you believe that it's your right as an American to have a gun because you want to hunt, protect your family, all that. And we're going to get into this. I'm not here to demonize you because I'm certain that you believe that this is a horrible, horrible eventuality as well. It's just, for me, I don't see how anybody's legislation could have stopped this. Yeah, so whether you're a gun person or not, I think we're all united in that this is a tragedy, and
yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure a lot of my Second Amendment friends would say, if there was a way to give up their rights for guns, but to guarantee that something like this would never happen. I'm not saying all of them would, but I'm certain a lot of them would.
Yeah, because a lot of people want their guns to protect their family. So if
Correct.
they landed in a situation like this, they wouldn't have to be at the mercy of one of the cops going to show up to take this guy down. They would just try to take the guy down themselves.
Well, what's tough is that Texas, this happened in a Walmart. When I lived in Houston,
That's wild.
every third person was carrying in Walmart,
Yeah.
in
Yeah, I
Five
remember you said
Guys,
that.
in Chick-fil-A. Everybody was carrying. So, what people, and people say things like the way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And what they don't understand is that it depends on the gun. Mm-hmm. If the guy's walking around with a pistol, sure, but this dude's got an AK-47. And if you're walking around with a little pea shooter on your hip, mm-hmm. And what people don't realize is most people's instinct is to, people run away from the field of fire, mm-hmm. Which ends up actually coagulating them into certain. I mean, it's a long story with active shooters, but most people don't know how to function in those moments, much less being able to fight back against this mm-hmm. guy. So I haven't heard any reports of people, returning fire on this guy, and you
always hear people say too, you don't hear this stuff happening in Texas where everybody's
correct.
And here it is.
Yeah, and this was a pretty obviously a pretty terrible situation, but this happened in the Parkland situation where the guy was armed, but he stayed outside because the other guy had superior firepower.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's not that simple. When guys are going around with assault rifles, and such, it's not your odds of taking that guy on and winning in that conflict are very, very low. I'm not saying that it never happens where a citizen doesn't intervene, but there's a lot of news stories you don't hear about people who did try to intervene and ended up dead. Because as I said, in the Dayton situation, he killed, I'm pretty sure he killed 9 people in 30 seconds. I mean, that's the kill potential for some of these folks. So, the first thing is, I really don't know legislatively what the solution could possibly be.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people are going to be upset about this, or a lot of people will decide not to do it. I get it, but I do think it's important to understand the mindset. So this guy wrote a manifesto right before he did what he did. And a
manifesto?
Yeah, a manifesto is kind of like, this is why I did what I did. It was very, very similar to the Antifa guy. Remember he wrote that thing?
Yeah.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there are a couple parts that are absolutely pertinent, I think. So he mentions a Christchurch shooter, so that guy in New Zealand that killed all those Muslims.
Yep.
So he immediately invokes him. That guy was also a white nationalist. And so he wanted to kill all these Muslims, and he wanted to give them incentives to leave New Zealand. This attack is a response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas.
Oh my gosh.
Now the irony of that is amazing if you think about it. A white guy is saying that the Hispanics are invading Texas.
Yeah. You do not know your history.
Now look, some people, here's the thing, he does know his history. I am simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement brought on by an invasion. Some people will think this statement is hypocritical because of the nearly complete ethnic and cultural destruction brought to the Native Americans by our European ancestors, but this just reinforces my point. The natives didn't take the invasion of Europeans seriously, and now what's left is just a shadow of what was. My motives for this attack are not at all personal. Actually, the Hispanic community was not my target before I read The Great Replacement. So, the replacement that he's talking about is this idea that whites are going to be replaced. I mean, I'm super simplifying this because I don't want to give The Great Replacement a lot of attention, but it's this idea that whites are subtly, subliminally being replaced, and that whites are not going to wake up to it until it's too late. And so that's why during the the initial protests where that young lady Heather Heyer, the Unite the Right protest, they were saying Jews will not
replace us.
replace us, right? So it's this ideology that white Europeans are being replaced. And you hear about the browning of America, and by 2050, you know, brown people will no longer be a minority; they'll be a majority, et cetera, et cetera. And so, this is stoking up all of this fear in the minds of a lot of young white people who are afraid that they are going to suffer the same fate as Native Americans did in the context of their European ancestors. Of course, the difference is obviously clear. The Europeans had superior weaponry, superior warfare. I mean these guys. I mean, compared to the Native Americans, to the Europeans, the Native Americans were in the Stone Age. They also were backed by basically an infinite amount of capital. Because, you know, of the Great Britain's colonization policies. Right. So, as a matter of fact, we were called the 13 colonies. They were sent here specifically to colonize with superior weaponry, superior tactics, and superior capital / resources. That is not the situation that white Europeans are in. So, he does not have that to fear. But he's convinced that he's going to be on the back end of an invasion. And you see the same thing with Richard Spencer, where he said, I don't want white people to be minorities because I know how minorities are treated. We treat minorities in this country terribly. So what he's saying is, I know that black and brown people have a terrible time in this country. So, and that's the reason why I want us to remain the majority. So if his entire, and Richard Spencer said, and I'm sure this guy also believes, that his entire identity is wrapped up in his whiteness. I mean, Richard Spencer explicitly said that. And so if you have the ideology that your entire identity is wrapped up in your race, then of course
you're going to be paranoid about losing that.
Of course.
That footing.
In short, America's rotting from the inside out. A peaceful means to stop this seems to be nearly impossible. The inconvenient truth is that our leaders, both Democrat and Republican, have been failing us for decades. The takeover of the United States government by unchecked corporations. I could write a 10-page essay on the damage done. Due to the death of the baby boomers, the increasingly anti-immigrant rhetoric of the right, and the ever-increasing Hispanic population, America will soon become a one-party state. The Democrat Party will own America, they know it. They have already begun the transition by pandering heavily to the Hispanic voting bloc in the first Democratic debate. They intend to use open borders, free health care for illegals, citizenship, and more to enact a political coup by importing and then legalizing millions of new voters. With policies like these, the Hispanic support for Democrats will likely become nearly unanimous in the future. The heavy Hispanic population in Texas will make us a Democratic stronghold. Losing Texas and a few other states with heavy Hispanic population to the Democrats is all it would take for them to win nearly every presidential election. Although the Republican Party is also terrible, many factions within the Republican Party are pro-corporation. Pro-corporation equals pro-immigration. But some factions within the Republican Party don't prioritize corporations over our future, so the Democrats are nearly unanimous with their support of immigration while the Republicans are divided over it. At least with Republicans, the process of mass immigration and citizenship can be greatly reduced. So what he's saying is, he's looking at, it's an amazing thought process, because I've been saying this in our other videos. Barack Obama deported more illegals, as this guy would call them, than anybody did. 3 million. He's called the deporter in chief. But now the left has become so radicalized that they've had to throw Obama under the bus. That's what happened in the second debate. And there was a question that was asked about Medicare for all. Would you extend Medicare for all for undocumented immigrants? And they all raised their hands. I think Tulsi kept her hand down. I'm not sure. And so this kid is saying this is just a leftist plot to convert all these millions of illegals and get them all to vote for Democrats.
Mm-hmm. No, I saw that.
It's a power grab, and it's like this kid has no concept of anything beyond what was in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Just 3 or 4 years ago, Barack Obama was the president, the Democrats were in office, and he deported more illegals than Bush did. And before Bush, when you had Clinton, Clinton was very, very hard on illegals as well. Mm-hmm. So he's got this. This kid is a prisoner of the moment, and it's very strange because a lot of times now what happens is when I say Obama and Clinton deported millions of people and had pretty inhumane ways of doing it. They come back and say, "Oh no, it's Trump." Well, this kid doesn't believe that Trump is deporting people. This kid believes that the Democratic Party is all about, giving citizenship to undocumented immigrants and giving them all. And of course, that's political suicide. All of that rhetoric that happened in the Democratic debate is going to be toned down at the general election, because everybody knows that the vast majority of Americans do not support that. Mm-hmm. But this kid has no trust in the process. Mm-hmm. And so his idea is he's just going to go and kill everybody that's Mexican. I mean, later on he basically said he's doing it to give them an incentive to go back to their home countries, is what he's saying.
Wow.
Yeah. He then goes on to talk about, why he's against race mixing. He says it's selfish. My whole life...
Selfish?
My whole life I have been preparing for a future that currently doesn't exist. The job of my dreams will likely be automated, and Hispanics will take control of the local, state, and government of my beloved Texas, changing policy to better suit their needs. They will turn Texas into an instrument of a political coup, which will hasten the destruction of our country. That part was the sad part, where this kid's he's looking at his.
Read that part.
Which one?
Right here, this one. Right here, talking about his 4 founding fathers. Read that part.
I can no longer bear the shame of inaction, knowing that our founding fathers have endowed me with the rights needed to save our country from the brink of destruction.
That's crazy, huh? He's talking about the Second Amendment?
Right. Because it's when you...
Yeah, because he said our European comrades don't have the gun rights needed to repel the millions of invaders that plague their country.
Right.
They have no choice but to sit by and watch their countries burn.
Right. So he is appealing to the Second Amendment here. To justify. Now, here's the thing that I really want to hammer out. Just because this kid is appealing to the Second Amendment to justify why he's doing what he's doing doesn't mean that every white male who appeals to the Second Amendment has this in their heart. Yeah. As I said, there's 350 million guns in America, and America is still dominated by white people. So if all white people who had guns and believed in the Second Amendment were like this, we wouldn't have a country anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, he talks about how his death is likely inevitable and how he's never going to surrender. He says if I get caught, it's because I was subdued. There's pictures of him getting walked out by the police.
Oh, he didn't get killed?
He didn't get killed. He didn't die. But now what's going on is everybody's saying, oh, kill this guy. Kill him. Because it's in Texas. So they're talking about, give the guy the death penalty. And he said it. He said, if I get caught, they're going to give me the death penalty anyway. I personally do not want this man killed. As I said, I'm a pacifist. I am a Christian, and I don't believe that it's appropriate for Christians in a given society to call for the blood of anyone. And so I don't want this man to have the death penalty. I don't want him killed. I don't see how losing 20 plus people in our country is going to be healed by losing a 21st. This man is
I see what you're saying. For me, I'm just like I don't have as much of an honorable reason for not wanting the man killed. I want him to rot some in jail. Who goes around and shoots babies? Like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Just shooting people in general is really terrible, but what type of a person goes and targets children? Yeah,
Matt Walsh posted on Twitter, he basically said the same thing. He's burn this guy. He targeted babies. You know,
I want bad things to happen. I know that that's not the Christian response, obviously, but I mean, I'm human too.
No, like I said, I get it, and I think Matt Walsh, is a Catholic, and he's calling for the death of this guy, and I understand the national outrage, but to me, the bloodlust for this kid is part and parcel of the reason why we're in the predicament that we're in. And it's almost like we're never going to learn the lesson. So this guy runs around and kills a bunch of people. Now we want to kill him. And I understand that the killings are not equivalent. I understand that.
Yeah.
He went around and killed a bunch of innocent people who couldn't defend themselves. He is guilty of mass murder. And he also said, and I'm saying this for his family, he said, "My family will hate me." And I think that that's important to say in the sense that he is acknowledging that they would not support that.
He's the one that killed his sister?
No. The guy that killed his sister we'll talk about him in a second. This is specifically about the El Paso shooter. He specifically said, "My family will hate me."
Wow.
And I think that's important because it's acknowledging that he acted by himself. This was not something where he was nurtured in some sort of white supremacist compound. This is his own ideology, and he knows that he's probably had a voice of stuff before, and his family probably didn't give him any room to speak, and so he knows that his family will hate him for that. And I think it's important that the family is not, that there's a distinction made between this guy and his family, who he knows will decry what he's done. His dad is a crisis counselor who had just recently last week treated somebody of a gunshot wound. And then he goes off and does this to other people. It's mind-boggling. And so to me, it's just like, okay, looking into this guy's mind, the common theme that I'm seeing is fear and disillusionment. He's afraid that his place in this country he's going to lose it, and he's also disillusioned. My whole life I've been preparing for a future that currently doesn't exist. The job of my dreams will likely be automated. So he talked about the environment as well. He's looking into the future, and he's very unsure about his place. And it seems to me that this guy was just suicidal and blamed his problems on immigrants, and was using this as an excuse to commit suicide by cop, while at the same time making a political statement, because he is looking to the future, and he doesn't see it as there's no optimism for him. And I think you can call it corny, you can call it whatever you want, but there is no legislative solution here that I can see. And so when people are pushed to the point where they have no hope and all they have is fear, they do crazy things. And obviously, I've said this a lot. We've had this conversation a lot. I've had a conversation with my kids because, I've got brown kids. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love, I've said over and over again, is fear. And, the scripture says it, perfect love casts out fear. There is no fear in love. Fear has to do with torment, right? Like, you're afraid of a certain thing, and so you're gonna act in such a way as to neutralize what you're afraid of. And it's like the girls, Dad, there's a June bug. Kill this June bug. Like, why do you want the June bug killed? Well, you're afraid of it. And so now we got to do this thing and kill this June bug because you're in fear. And so a lot of this is this kid is in complete and utter fear of his future. He is used to, I think there's a segment.
Why do you keep calling him a kid? Was he young?
Well, he's in his 20s. He's in his.
Oh my gosh.
He's in his low 20s. He was looking at a certain kind of future. He thought that, when you're young, and I'm assuming when you're young and you're white and you're affluent, you just think you're going to inherit, the kingdom. And then as he got older, he realized that things are going to be more difficult. Maybe the job he wanted was going to get taken up in automation, and maybe he felt he could not compete with the Hispanics in the area, and all of that coalesced for him to be a certain way. And The man, he said something very interesting at the end. He basically said, look what he says here. My ideology has not changed for several years. My opinions on automation, immigration. Notice he puts automation before immigration.
Yeah.
Automation, what's terrorizing everybody right now when you talk about automation is that we're constantly being told we're going to lose millions and millions of jobs. He put that before immigration. I think that's important. My opinions on automation, immigration, and the rest predate Trump and his campaign for president. I'm putting this here because some people will blame the president or certain presidential candidates for the attack. This is not the case. I know the media will probably call me a white supremacist anyway and blame Trump's rhetoric. Yes, and yes, the media is infamous for fake news. I'm sorry. Anybody who has watched this channel will know that I am very, very careful and nuanced in how I handle what Trump says.
Yeah.
But for this kid to act as if Trump has no bearings whatsoever of responsibility on this action is simply untrue. The fact of the matter is, this kid is clearly unstable. We agree. He clearly probably would have done something, whether or not Trump said something, I'm not sure. But if you made that argument, I wouldn't call you crazy. However, he consistently uses the term invasion. And this is literally the exact same language that the synagogue shooter used when he went and shot up the synagogue, because those Jewish people were helping, as the Torah commands them, helping the foreigners. So they were helping the migrant caravan. They were sending supplies, and they were saying you can be a destination here, yada yada yada. And so this guy, another white supremacist, used the term invasion and then said, screw the optics, I'm going in, and he goes in and he shoots up a bunch of Jewish people. And at that, I specifically said, Trump, I don't know what the percentage is, but he's responsible, because that was during the whole midterm elections, and he kept using the term invasion.
Yeah.
And when you sign up in the military, it's the famous quote is that you vow to protect your country against enemies, both foreign and domestic. So if your country is literally being invaded, then that's what you're supposed to do, right? Every citizen's a soldier, isn't that the whole idea? So I'm sorry, young man, but no, Trump absolutely, his rhetoric, I hold him responsible, at least partially, for not toning down this rhetoric. After the synagogue shooter, especially since he used the term invader, Trump should have got up there and he should have had a moment with America. You can buy an hour. All of us, whether we hate you or loved you, would have listened to you, Mr. President. You didn't do that. You got up, you made some 2-minute statement, it's terrible, blah, 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 and then it was business as usual. Now here comes this kid. He uses the exact same language about immigrants that you have consistently used and have not backtracked. He hasn't backtracked it. I don't blame Donald Trump for white supremacists. They've been around before Trump, and they'll be around after him, and quite frankly, they don't like him. Richard Spencer has said that Trump was full of it. The dude that was the main interlocutor during the Unite the Right stuff hated Trump because he married his daughter to a Jew. And Trump's daughter converted to Judaism and took the name JL before she married Mr. Kushner.
Yep.
So, but this is the problem, where we have now these really extreme sides, where either Trump is a Nazi or somehow he's a second incarnation of Jesus Christ. And now what's happening is this kid is trying to say it has nothing to do with Trump. It has a lot to do with Trump. Yeah. Trump has not come out and disavowed white supremacists. Now, Beto came on TV and called Trump a white supremacist, which, again, I think is aiding the problem. I don't believe that Trump is a militant white supremacist. I do believe that Trump knows that white supremacists are more likely than not to vote for him, and so he won't come out and say anything acerbic about white supremacists. He won't come out and call them out for what they are and marginalize them, because he understands that they're a voting bloc that he can dominate. It's the same reason that Barack Obama, his preacher Jeremiah Wright was preaching black identity theology. which is inherently racist. But Barack Obama wouldn't come out and explicitly and totally disavow all black identitarians because that was a voting bloc that he was going to dominate. And there's no reason to alienate them. All he has to say is, look, I'm not that guy, and then get all the votes. The problem is with Trump is that this is not 2008. The political conversation in our country has metastasized to the point where you can't play those games anymore.
Right.
I would hold Obama just as responsible if we had a rise of black nationalists who were going around killing people. If he didn't come out and disavow that and separate himself from that and marginalize those people, then it would have been a thing. But again, even when you talk about marginalizing these people, I'm not even sure that that's the solution, right? So like if Trump comes out and says these are disgusting, nasty, rotten, evil people, I think that that's just going to play right into their hands and push them more to the margins and make them more active. What he needs to do is to say, to take this seriously and offer some hope to these white nationalists. Because they're hopeless.
Yeah,
they feel like their country's slipping. And let them know that there's a future for them. While at the same time saying, but if you want to be one of these people that's going to go around and kill other Americans, there's no future for you. So choose. I think that'd be a good way for Trump to deal with it. But, Mr. President, you're the leader. And I'm sorry, because I know right now it's going to be a bunch of Trump apologists, even though, the last 4 or 5 videos we've shot have essentially had us defending Trump to the point where people were calling us, closet Trump supporters.
Yeah.
But if you're going to be the leader, then you have got to take accountability for what happens on your watch. These are people that would listen to you. And I really believe that Trump needs to get up there and do that. Again, not completely demonize and marginalize these people. To the best of your ability, relate to what they're afraid of and what they're hopeless about. Give these people some hope, give them some courage, and they'll be less likely to throw their lives away. Because these guys are making a decision to throw their lives away.
Right.
And it just so you think about Islamic terrorism, you're not seeing a bunch of rich Arabs who all of a sudden join Al-Qaeda or these other groups. It's usually poor, marginalized young men who feel emasculated and who feel they have no future, who just so happen to volunteer to blow themselves up. It's very rare that you get a rich person who's got stuff. That's why Bin Laden was such a celebrity in that milieu, is because he was a billionaire and he gave it all up to go do jihad. But Bin Laden was an exception that proves the rule. Most people that take part in terrorist activities are people that have a hopeless future and are full of fear. So that's what these people need. Now, I know people are going to say that I am softballing this issue and softballing this kid. Look, we already know that the kid is terrible. We already know that what he did was horrible. Coming down and piling on this kid and talking about how horrible he is and how horrible white supremacists are is not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem is we need to look at the root cause issues, because if we don't do it at the citizen level, I promise you we're not going to get any solutions. Because like I said at the beginning of this video, you show me any form of legislation that could have stopped this particular action. People like this are extremely resourceful. They know how to arm themselves. So that, to me, that's the only solution, is that our leaders need to address this issue, because this is a soul issue in America. A lot of people are talking about a pending civil war. And, I gotta tell you, it doesn't seem, it's not going to be manifested in the way that the initial civil war was, obviously. But when you've got a country that's flooded with guns, and then you have radicalized ideology, then this is going to happen. Now, the irony of all this. So the El Paso shooter was obviously a far right fascist, white supremacist. This guy, the guy that shot up the
They're all young.
Oh, exactly. It's all young white males. Now, this guy was a leftist. Connor, this is heavy.com.
Did he do a manifesto? Do a lot of them do that?
I don't. They're just scrubbing his Twitter page right now. Connor Betts, a Dayton, Ohio mass shooter, was a self-described leftist who wrote that he would happily vote for Democrat Elizabeth Warren, praised Satan, was upset about the 2016 presidential election results, and added, "I want socialism, and I'll not wait for the idiots to finally come around to understanding." Betts' Twitter profile read, "He, him, anime fan, metalhead, leftist. I'm going to hell and I'm not coming back." One tweet on his page read, "Off to midnight mass. At least the songs are good. Hashtag atheists on Christmas." On the date of Republican Senator John McCain's death, he wrote, "F. John McCain." November 2nd, 2018, he wrote, "Vote blue for God's sake." "This is America, guns on every corner, guns in every house, no freedom but that to kill," he wrote in December 2018. Tis the pistol is a Beretta 93R called the RAK Rex 7 in BO4. "Do love me some guns." How much did they pay to make you look? I mean, so, and then 17 kids are dead. If not now, when? So he's talking about the Parkland shooting. And then he went off and committed an act of shooting himself. "This is bad," he wrote on November 8th, 2016. "You can't kill 50 plus people and injure 600 in 10 minutes with cigarettes, my dude," he wrote in 2017 in response to a BuzzFeed story that read, "Virginia has declared a state of emergency in anticipation of the Unite the Right rally anniversary in Charlottesville this weekend." He wrote, "Kill every fascist." His top post was a retweet of a person responding to a Huffington Post story. That person responded, Millennials have a message for Joe Biden, for the Joe Biden generation. Hurry up and die." He shared a post that showed Donald Trump and referred to a global fascist movement. Okay, so this guy is a leftist. He shared posts about concentration camps at the border and wrote, "Cut the fences down, slice ice tires, throw bolt cutters over the fences." He retweeted a post from another person about stealing from right-wingers at a Trump rally. One of his tweets referred to white people. "Imagine if we did the thing you like, but in a way that totally ruins what you liked about it. Wouldn't that be fun? Haha. Also, of course, they're all white people. Of course they are," he wrote. So this is a guy who is the prototype of leftism in America. You know, the identity politics, the calling Trump a fascist. I suppose a person could call that a dog whistle to Antifa. And it's mind-boggling to me that on Saturday we had a far-right guy go out and commit mass murder.
Right.
And then Saturday night or Sunday, we had a far-lefter go out and commit mass murder.
Yeah.
And both of them used rhetoric and language that both of the leaders of said groups are using. So AOC is running around calling these ICE facilities concentration camps. They're not. They're not. They're not. And we reported about the Antifa operative who went in there with his modified M4 and almost burned those poor immigrants to death. We talked about that, and we talked about holding AOC responsible for using inflammatory language like concentration camps. Now, again, is AOC 1,000% responsible for this guy? No. But you are responsible for putting this out into the ether. We do not have concentration camps. Barack Obama did not build concentration camps at our border. He didn't. Even The Guardian said that the facilities were humane. They actually called them bright and clean. This is The Guardian, which is a far left media outpost. But because we have to one-up each other, we have to throw out all this crazy rhetoric. And so now, and again, it's just like we said about the invasion thing. if your country is being invaded, most people would say the right thing to do would be to stop the invasion. Well, if there is a concentration camp, the right thing to do would be to liberate the concentration camp, right? But nobody's being held accountable for the extreme language that we're using now. This kid is not as well thought out in what he was doing as the other
guy,
the right-wing shooter.
Yeah.
But this stuff is just, look, we've got to figure it out. We've got to stop using this crazy rhetoric and then stop calling, okay, so now Trump is a fascist.
Yeah.
And then everybody who supports Trump is a fascist.
It feels like everybody, that they're trying to like use this extreme language to make it so that way they can demonize the other side.
Right.
And they're so busy playing this game that they're not realizing that there are people that are taking what they're saying so literally that they're responding in crazy ways to that information. Right. And now people are dying because of it.
Right.
And this is not the beginning, and it's not the end either.
Right. There are people who are imbalanced who, I think these politicians have not caught up to the fact that we're 2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, 20, 30 years ago, you could say something reckless, it would show up on the news and then it would be gone to another news story. But now, we've got a 24-hour news cycle. So all you were hearing through the midterms was invasion. And then you've got YouTube. So you can rewind it and keep playing it and completely radicalize yourself. Before, these groups would sit you, it's like Clockwork Orange, they'd sit you in front of a TV and make you watch something over and over again to the point where you became brainwashed. But now people are radicalizing themselves. Because now you've got access to all of this media that continuously is using all of this inflammatory language. And I know there's a lot of people like, that's ridiculous. I was talking to somebody at a fireside one time, and some Republican had posted a picture of a person that was about to be assassinated.
Yeah.
Like, it was like 2 seconds before he was being assassinated, and everybody was making a joke of it. And I'm like, do you think that that's funny? That's not funny.
Yeah.
Like, now you're putting that out into the ether and putting that in the minds of already unstable people. So, again, we're in this situation where, here we go. Now, I don't know, this guy, to my knowledge, didn't leave a manifesto, but he was already obviously an unbalanced person, obviously unwell, and
this kid's dead?
Now we've got, he died. This is the guy that died within 30 seconds, I believe. Yeah. But he was tooled up. He had his gear and everything. But this is what happens, is that if you're on the left, you've got to call everybody that supports Trump a fascist and a racist. And then if you're on the right, anybody that's against Trump hates America and whatever. And so now, because we're using this extreme language now, and now this stuff is spilling out into the streets, where I've been very critical about Antifa. And one of the things one of the things that bothered me about the Antifa situation was I said, right-wingers have grown up with guns all their life.
Yep.
And they're much more efficient killers.
Yep.
And and again, not all right-wingers. I'm talking about the ones who would actually do something. These are people that have done it all their life. So when Antifa shuts down traffic and starts directing traffic and telling people where to go.
Yelling at old men, slamming their, banging on people's vehicles. And
right. When this happens, then it engenders a certain type of rage within people.
Yep.
And you've got a YouTube clip of a black woman, yelling and screaming and smacking this guy's car and telling this white guy what to do, and
he was like an old man. He was very old. Right. I kept thinking, if that was my grandfather and somebody was doing
I was angry at it.
What the heck?
I was angry about it.
How are you gonna do that to that old man?
So imagine being a white supremacist. The cops are there. The cops are there. Nothing is being done. This black girl is going after this old white guy. Nothing is being done.
Yep.
This goes perfectly into the replacement narrative.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
And when you assault a reporter, it stokes up a certain type of, okay, let's see if you'll do that to me.
Yep.
And so this is stuff that's getting like is getting dragged out into our streets, and people in these various groups don't realize what they're playing around with. Mm-hmm. To me, this seems to be like a textbook psychological operation that the CIA does when they want to initiate regime change. I mean, it really, really does. You take elements from both sides, you crush them all together, and then you create all this chaos. We've done that over and over again. I mean, it's open source stuff. If I didn't know better, I'd be like, man, is there some foreign country doing this to us? Mm-hmm. Because forget about bots and Facebook posts in the election. Like, this stuff right here is just crazy.
Yeah.
Again, Saturday it's a far right guy, Sunday it's a far left guy. Mm-hmm. It's insane. And, you know, both of them are speaking in these absolutist terms, and there can be no middle ground. You know, there can be no, and you know, you saw this in the second Democratic debate where they're going after Obama, and Biden's like, I have no idea where this came from. Mm-hmm. Like, in 2.5, 3 years, we went from, you know, a guy who got reelected, you know, Barack Obama, with a 97% approval rate among Democrats, and now he's like, Biden has to answer for being a partner of Obama. Mm-hmm. So like, everybody's just getting radicalized. Mm-hmm. And then the rhetoric is getting steeped. And then Beto, I think Beto, it was a terrible misstep. I think it was terrible for Beto to come out and put it all on Trump, speak without nuance, and then say that Trump is a white supremacist. Like, it to me, that's just political grandstanding, and it's honestly, Beto, that's sickening. Mm-hmm. That you would use that to further that agenda, mm-hmm. knowing, well, maybe he doesn't know, but it's that very thing that creates these situations. It's this, to your point, complete demonization of anybody that has a different opinion than you. And the more and more you demonize these people and then start attaching names to them, fascist, mm-hmm. communist, whatever you want to use to demonize the other side, then it becomes easier to kill people.
Yep.
This is a standard pattern that has been used over and over and over and over and over again. And so we need sane voices to really sit down and listen to people. You know, if you've got a white guy who says, I feel like I'm being replaced in my country, I don't recognize my country anymore, to immediately dismiss that guy as just a nasty, horrible, terrible racist, I think it's crazy. Mm-hmm. You know, and to, you know, we kind of saw this in a softer way with Gillibrand, where she said she's going to go to the white women that voted for Trump and explain white privilege to them. The implication is, if you voted for Trump, you're a racist. Mm-hmm. Again, this bifurcated idea of who we are as Americans. Americans are not that simple. People. We're not that simple. We're complex, and a lot of us will meet in the middle if you give us a middle option. But because we're not being given a middle option, because we're now the rhetoric, everybody's racing to find what rhetoric we can use to make the person even worse. I saw somebody, you know, Ivanka Trump, you know, we had to correct somebody who was posting on Facebook in a forum that had about 500,000 people, and he posted a supposed picture of Ivanka Trump wearing a swastika. Oh, yeah. Yep. Now, again, this is a woman that converted to Judaism and took on a Jewish name. And when he was confronted with him, it took him about 4 or 5 hours for him to take it down. Yeah. All these types of things feed into these types of actions. And we've got to be really, really, really careful about what we put out there, because that phrase, "we are the media," is extremely serious. And it's literally true. We are now the media. Yep. And so we can't wash our hands of this anymore and say, oh, well, we're, you know, yeah, it's CNN, Fox News, da-da-da-da. You know, look, you spend more time on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram than you do watching Fox News. Most of you heard about these shootings from Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So, here's my kind of final thought on this whole situation. You know, I think you need to find somebody on the opposite side of the aisle and talk to them and hear out what they're saying. We just posted a debate about 48 hours ago on our channel. It was a moderated debate where I disagreed stridently, and my opponent disagreed with me stridently. But you know what? We didn't have to trot out any name calling. We didn't have to do anything. All we did was lay out the facts and why I agreed and why she disagreed, and that's how it works. And I think in our country, we need to start having more of those kinds of conversations that don't have to have a winner and a loser, where you're not going to decapitate somebody for having a different perspective than you. We've got to do that, and you've got to call people out. Just because somebody is your political opponent does not mean that we get to lie, right? So this guy doesn't like Trump, so he hates Trump's daughter, so he feels fine about posting a story of her being a Nazi.
Yep.
Be careful about the words that you put out there. Stop calling Trump a Nazi. He's not a Nazi. Stop saying that Bernie Sanders wants to turn America into Venezuela. He doesn't. And we've got to all take accountability and responsibility for what we're putting out in the ether. If we don't have any hope, because we cannot rely on politicians to lead us. Mm-hmm. That's one of the weird things about a democracy, is that when you choose your leaders then become beholden to you and can't really lead in a way that's 100% authentic, because they have to worry that you're going to elect them. That's why the Supreme Court doesn't have any term limits. That's the reason. Because we don't want them to be compromised by having to always go up for re-election.
Right.
So and I'm not saying it's completely terrible and wrong. What I'm saying is, you live in a democracy, which means that at some level the people have the power, and we've got to take accountability for how we're using that power, is what I'm saying. And so that's what we've tried to do with Middle America. That's the reason why I've been so hard on leftists and anti-Trumpers last week, even though I'm probably more left than most people when it comes to immigration. I'm for open borders. I call them biblical borders. Mm-hmm. I'm more left in that perspective. I want Medicare for all. And so I know I'm not going to get that with a Trump presidency, but I also wanted to combat the silliness that has been attached to him for the last 2 weeks, because it's not an accurate depiction of what's going on. We don't get to lie about our political enemies. And I don't believe that anybody, whether it's Barack Obama, George Bush, Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi, I don't believe any of them are saying, I'm going to do what's in the worst interest of America. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that. I believe that a lot of them want to line their pockets. I believe that a lot of them want to consolidate power. But I don't believe they want to destroy our country on either side. And so let's just engage each other with an assumption of charity, as they say. And, we're usually more energetic and it's usually funny, but I got to tell you guys that this week's been a real gut punch. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to get used to
these kinds of tragedies.
These kinds of situations. I was downstairs, I was looking at my kids, they were playing around, laughing, holding the babies, watching her, and as I'm looking at that, I'm like, somebody's got to go to some morgue and identify their kid. So, anyway. Love your neighbor.
Take care of each other.
Middle America.
We are the media.
Till next time, guys.